Welcome back to the New Quantum Era, the podcast that brings you conversations with the researchers, thinkers, and pioneers at the cutting edge of quantum science and technology. I'm your host, Sebastian Hassinger. Today, I'm excited to introduce a special guest, Dr. Charlotte Bøttcher, who is launching her very own research group at Stanford University. She earned her PhD at Harvard and then did a postdoc with Michel Devoret at Yale, and is now an assistant professor at Stanford, and is setting up her own experimental group there. We recorded this at APS Global Summit with the help from the American Physical Society, so my thanks to them. I'm almost done the recordings that I made at APS Global Summit. There's only one left to go, and I've been recording some additional newer episodes, so you can expect to shift from APS conversations to newer conversations in the next couple of weeks. Dr. Bøttcher is an experimentalist, as I mentioned, and we'll be talking about her work in hybrid material systems. She's a condensed matter physicist, so she's looking at superconducting devices and hybrid materials that combine superconducting materials with semiconductors. And these have some potential for tunable superconductivity, switchable quantum devices where you can turn on and off the superconductivity, and also search for exotic states of matter like unconventional and topological superconductors. So we'll hear about Charlotte's experiences building a new lab from the ground up, the interplay of experiment and theory, and her vision for both foundational science and real-world quantum technologies. So I hope you enjoy. Charlotte, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, Sebastian. Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
How's your week been going? How are you enjoying the APS Summit?
Good. Very busy.
Yes.
Very exciting.
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of very interesting and exciting results and presentations.
And you were presenting yourself as well, right?
I did, yeah. I was in earlier this week. And
okay.
Yeah.
What was your session about?
So this was about a hybrid material system that combines superconducting systems with semiconductors.
Right.
And so, yeah, a lot of really interesting research is going on both in quantum information technology, but also just fundamental physics questions that we can answer. Yeah.
Right. And what's the exact semiconductor and superconducting materials you're working with?
So this is in particular aluminum. So this is a very standard superconductor that we understand and love. And then
who doesn't love aluminum?
I know, right? Yeah. Actually, my mom works with aluminum too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So it runs in the family?
It does.
That's nice.
Yeah. And then we combine it with indium arsenide.
Okay.
So that's a little more exotic.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people like to touch it.
Right.
So yeah. But it creates a very exciting system to work with.
Yeah. So I mean, it's interesting. I caught that a while ago when I started hearing about these hybrid systems. It's literally two materials sandwiched together or actually fabricated in some kind of very tightly integrated way that makes a physical system essentially, right?
Yeah. And it really combines two key elements that we love, especially from my perspective. If I wanted to create something, switchable devices, this is for technology and whatever you can imagine that, for instance, your phones, you need switching for your transistors.
Right.
Now in quantum, you want something that is quantum technology and often also tunable and switchable.
Right.
And because a semiconductor, which again is implemented in a lot of devices, gives you that switchability, but then superconductivity is sort of a very unique property that you
Right.
can add onto it.
Right.
But now combining those two, it actually means that now you can also switch superconductivity
Okay.
on and off.
So, for example, I mean, I remember the first time I heard this, the use case was two qubits, where neighboring qubits that are linked together, so you can entangle them and do 2-qubit gates, but you could also turn off that link
Yes.
and isolate each from the other and reduce crosstalk and noise overall in the system. That's sort of the
Absolutely.
quantum application, I guess.
Yes, and superconductivity is also used to just make the qubit itself, and so it's used in various both academic groups to make qubits. We're not so scalable yet as the companies,
Right.
but yes. So both in terms of couplers between qubits, but also the qubits themselves
Right.
can be superconducting circuits. Actually, yeah.
And in terms of sort of foundational scientific investigation, what can you learn from that type of complex system?
A lot. We
Yeah.
can dive into almost anything. Especially these systems, if you combine this particular superconductor and semiconductor, that can give rise to some more unconventional superconductivity. So that's sort of typically how we physicists talk about superconductors. You know, there's the vanilla kind, which is the aluminum. We know it.
Right.
We can understand it very well and write down all of its equations.
Right.
But then the unconventional ones are interesting for more exotic states of matter. There are more fundamental questions that we're still learning about.
Right.
Topological superconductors.
I had a feeling that word was going to come up.
Yes.
It's kind of one of the themes of
Yes.
APS this week, isn't it?
Absolutely. But I think that there's just still a lot to even just understand about how can we control this superconducting phase, even when it's very boring,
Right.
as you would say. But
Right.
really
Right.
it isn't.
Are there other exotic types of superconducting beyond topological? It seems like it's hogging all the attention. So
Yes.
are there lesser known?
I mean, there's a whole range of sort of unconventional superconductors. There's actually what people call high TC superconductors.
Right.
So, I mean, recently you also might have heard about, room temperature
Right.
superconductivity.
Of course.
I mean, we're not
Every couple of years.
Yes, every couple of years it comes up. But high TC superconductors is sort of another category.
Okay.
And they are also unconventional.
Okay.
And so, and this is sort of very detailed in how exactly. So in superconductors, electrons pair up.
Yeah.
And
Cooper pairs.
Cooper pairs,
Right.
exactly. And the way that they pair up, sort of according to the spin orientation, determines whether they're the conventional kind or unconventional
Okay.
kind. But in high TC superconductors, it often turns into these unconventional pairing. And they're very complex and hard to understand, but their critical temperature, the TC, is hundreds of Kelvin, which sort of compared to something like aluminum is 100 times higher.
Right.
So it really is a fascinating direction to understand, exactly how, these interactions between electrons and how they pair leads to that, regime where you get such a high critical temperature.
Right. Is it more disordered, the behavior, because of that complexity?
It's often very disordered systems. Yeah.
So harder to control in an application like a qubit, for example.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes, it is.
Interesting. But I suppose if you could understand well enough how the disorder is structured, you might be able to still harness it for more, useful applications that wouldn't need a millikelvin kind of range.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, I would say that in particular, quantum simulation is something that we're sort of starting to realize is actually quite powerful to predict some of these, more complex systems. And I think that's also something that we're doing in my group, which is to try to understand what really gives rise to these strongly correlated systems.
Right,
Yeah.
right. You mentioned your group. That's you've just established your group for the first time at Stanford. Congratulations.
Yes. Thank you.
What has that been like, just sort of transitioning from, for context, you were a postdoc with Michel Devoret at Yale. Devoret is very, very well known and has had a long career with many incredible accomplishments. You're now sort of launched out into your own professorship and starting to build your own group. What's that been like?
Yeah, it's been exciting and a lot of work, but I think it's just every single day you're enjoying it. I think it's exciting to work with young students and the new generation to teach and work with them, and we're starting to get our new first systems. So we work with these dilution refrigerators where we can cool down, let's say, superconductors and these materials, and we have to install everything from the beginning, and that's a lot of fun. Yeah.
You like building a lab?
Oh yeah.
I think it would be really tough to be an experimental physicist and not love building labs, right?
Right. Yeah, for sure.
So what do you have a sense of what your agenda, what your goals are going to be for the group initially?
Yeah, I think that we're sort of a hybrid group, like the materials a little bit. We would like to build devices that can be applied to, let's say, in the quantum information direction. We're focusing on more on new systems, new materials that can be applied to add new functionalities to those qubits. Also, we're just interested in understanding very complex systems. So that's where quantum simulation comes in, and also quantum sensing. And I think quantum sensing is something that, actually qubits and these quantum circuits, one of the sort of the bottlenecks for using them is the fact that they're so sensitive to their environments. But that can be very useful if you want to sense something with them. So one thing we're doing is also just applying some of these technologies to probe and sense systems that we don't know much about.
So other quantum systems then? Interesting. What would be an example of when you're sensing a magnetic field, or what are the characteristics you're trying to sense?
Yeah, it could be magnetic degrees of freedom, charge, superconducting properties, some interesting insulating properties, coexisting degrees of freedom, and really, as just an example, we're using a really interesting crystal that's comprised of uranium, but is actually a superconductor, and that's puzzling, and people are trying to understand, what exactly is the nature of this superconducting state, and so
that's a much heavier element than most superconductors are, I think, right?
Yes.
Interesting.
It has a very complex phase diagram, and here we can couple to something that's called collective modes. So there are collective excitations of the spins in the superconductor, and that gives us a way to couple, because a spin is slightly a magnetic moment, and so we can couple these quantum devices or qubits to that moment, and actually quite strongly potentially. So that will give us a way to couple to these systems that we don't know much about yet.
Interesting. And when you say quantum simulation, are you building devices that simulate a Hamiltonian, that essentially run a Hamiltonian, or whatever? You can observe the time evolution of that Hamiltonian?
Yeah, that's kind of the idea. So we're looking at different kinds of Hamiltonians, and you can think of a very simple one, or at least to us it's reasonably simple, but the key is really that it's a many-body system that we're trying to simulate, so it's many particles that interact, and then the question is also what kind of particles, and here we're looking at both bosonic particles, and then there's also another category which are fermionic, and they can all give rise to very different kinds of Hamiltonians, but that we think we can potentially synthesize in our systems and actually control, and then going back to sort of earlier of like disorder and complexity, we also have a way that we could potentially control disorder and actually turn that on and off and see how that interacts with our Hamiltonian. Yeah.
How do you control disorder?
Yeah.
That seems like a contradiction in terms.
It's a little bit, it sort of comes again back to the materials and how materials can be affected by different parameters. And so one way that we can control a semiconductor is by electrofields.
Right.
And these electric fields can tune your sort of density of carriers. And often when you have a lot of carriers around, they actually together help screen if there are any defects in your system.
Oh, interesting.
So the more you have, the less you really sort of average over all these defects. But if you decrease that density, each of your electrons now see more clearly the defects or the disorder that's in the system. And so just by tuning, let's say, your density of carriers, you can effectively also...
And carriers, you mean electrons on the surface?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
And so that's a way to at least tune your susceptibility to disorder.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. So the disorder is inherent to the underlying material.
Yes.
And the density of the electrons either exposes or... that's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool. So, I mean, I can kind of guess the answer to this, but what's the advantage in your mind of building a simulation device versus trying to simulate in a quantum computer? Is it? I mean, if you have a universal quantum computer, then theoretically you should be able to create that simulation in the computer as well.
Absolutely, yeah. I think there's certain advantages right now, which is that we can make more sites or more particles interact because of the systems that we're using. So we can get up to thousands of particles that can interact.
Way beyond the scale of current computers. Yeah.
Right. And so, but at some point, I do think that, they will overcome and it will be a lot more advantageous to use a quantum computer. And we're not there yet. So we're kind of, in this between, use and application and research, I would say. Yeah.
It's interesting. I've heard of, although I've never actually heard of somebody actually building, but I've heard the idea floated of sort of hybrid, purpose-built simulation with some degree of universal gate-based qubits as well. So you can sort of combine maybe control or sensing of that simulation device or from the computation.
Yeah.
Is that something that you would think about doing, or is that?
Yeah. So I think that we're definitely looking into more sort of local control also, and how we can, let's say, have one local site interact with another, and how does that work for this collective system. I also know that can be hard in certain systems where, for instance, atom arrays are another way that you could also have control over particles.
Right.
And actually, superconducting qubits is another direction where you can use the state, either the 0 or 1 state of the qubit as sort of a particle as well can interact. And here, yes, single qubit gates become important. We're not sort of there yet in terms of our quantum simulator or the direction that we're working in, but this becomes an important question too.
That's really cool. And your experience as a postdoc, I mean, Yale is sort of the storied Valhalla of superconducting qubits. You've got transmods and bosonic qubits and like so many dual rail qubits now all coming out of the Yale gang. What was that like being part of that sort of organization in Devoret's group?
It was a great experience for me. It was definitely a very unique place. I think that there is a great interaction between experiments and theory that I don't really think I've seen other places where I've been. And so you just kind of run into theorists and you can talk to them. I'm an experimentalist, so run into theorists and you can talk to them very easily. Rob Shulkoff is there as well on the same floor, and so the interaction between the two groups is really valuable.
Right.
And I think that for me, it was the best place that I could, dive into these superconducting qubits. And and learn a lot from the experts in the field,
right.
I would say.
Right.
So.
And are you continuing collaborations between your group and the Yale groups?
Yes, we're still, so actually so Michel is now moving closer to Google.
Oh, that's right,
In fact, yeah. And, but that means that that's on the West Coast, and so our groups could potentially more easily interact as well. But we do have some grants together that we're continuing. And also another professor actually at Yale that we started interacting with on sort of the materials side, we're also still collaborating with.
That's really good. And so, like, when you think about, next APS, what work do you hope your group will be presenting? Obviously, you don't want to give away any secrets so you don't get scooped or whatever. Yeah. but do you have a sense of what you want to accomplish in the next year?
Yeah, I think first of all, just having working systems, that's goal number one. But yeah, just picking up a little bit where we left off at Yale. So we're building these new kinds of superconducting qubits that can work at higher temperature and higher frequency, which is now also what is sort of actively explored in the field to build more scalable systems.
Right.
So I'm hoping that we're going to have at least a couple of working qubits by next year that we can present on, and hopefully the coherence times are good as well. And then maybe we'll have some initial results on the quantum simulation platforms.
Right.
So yeah.
And the hybrid systems, is that something you're going to continue in the new group as well?
Yes, we will. And in fact, our collaborator that we're growing these hybrid systems we've been talking to, and about getting these samples.
And when you think about topological systems, are you hunting for the Majorana fermion as well?
I would say if they show up in our systems,
they're welcome.
They're welcome. We wouldn't mind. But I think for now there's a lot of other exciting directions, and I think that we're probably working close in the same regimes in the fact that we are using the same systems where you would be able to generate Majorana if the system allows it, the disorder is good. But that is also a place where you can just do a lot of very interesting physics experiments as well.
Yeah.
So, if we start looking there and we find something, maybe maybe then
it wouldn't
we'll
be
dive.
bad.
Yeah.
And the high TC materials, do you think that it's possible to actually implement a qubit with that type of material if you could understand the nature of the disorder to the degree where you could control it?
So I think the high TC superconductors that have this sort of unconventional pairing or conventional superconducting properties, it might be a little harder to get a very good coherent qubit, and there are a few reasons why that is. It's just that some of the loss mechanisms that are in these systems might just be too bad for building a really good qubit, but they could be used for other applications, and in fact integrated with other kinds of qubits where could be used for these sort of couplers that also interact with the qubit, and so there's definitely, I think, a lot of really great applications for them in the quantum computing direction. Whether they themselves can be a good qubit, I think, is still an open question.
I see. That's really interesting. And so, if you had to characterize, like, what's the sort of split, like, just to give me a sense in an experimental sort of theme in your group, how much of what you're doing is fundamental science versus sort of building blocks for technologies, or do you even think of it as two different things?
I actually think that they're very related,
right.
and there's a great intersection that we're working in where they just, they help each other,
right.
meaning that the fundamental questions that we can answer helps us figure out how to build maybe a better qubit or a new kind of qubit, and then those systems can maybe help answer new questions
right.
in the systems that we're trying to use. So I look at them as highly interconnected. And I would say that, in some cases we are more applied. But I think that it's all it goes together for us.
Yeah. That's what I find so fascinating about this moment right now is that there really isn't any decoupling of the two. These are very exotic lab instruments that are teaching us all sorts of things about fundamental quantum mechanics that help us make the lab instruments more useful. So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's great. Well, thank you very much, Charlotte. This has been really fun. I'm very much looking forward to what comes out of your group, and I look forward to the presentations at APS next year.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the podcast, a production of the New Quantum Era, hosted by me, Sebastian Hassinger, with theme music by OCH. You can find past episodes on www.newquantumera.com or on Blue Sky at newquantumera.com. Thanks again to the support from APS for this episode. If you enjoy the podcast, please subscribe and tell your quantum curious friends to give it a listen.